One of the biggest surprises people experience when they move into management is this. The skills that made you successful before your promotion are often not the same skills that will make you successful afterwards. I've seen excellent employees become average managers. I've also seen average employees become exceptional leaders. So if you've recently stepped into management and found it harder than expected, you're not alone. In this video, I'll explain why good employees sometimes struggle when they become managers and what you can do to avoid the same mistakes. Let's start with a simple question. Why do people get promoted? Usually because they're good at their job. They hit targets, they know the processes, they're dependable, they solve problems, and they're the person that everyone turns to when something needs doing. The challenge is that management is a completely different job. As an employee, your success is measured by what you achieve. As a manager, your success is measured by what your team achieves. And that shift catches a lot of people out. It certainly caught me out. My first management position came from me working my way up the ranks. I knew the site, the client. I also knew every job inside out. However, when I got promoted, I wasn't prepared to take on the mindset of leading the team. Instead, for a long time, I carried on doing what I felt comfortable with and what I knew, rather than leading the team. And this leads nicely into struggle number one, letting go of being the expert. Many new managers have spent years being the expert. They're the person with the answers, the person who fixes problems, the person who knows how everything works. And then they become the manager. Suddenly, they're expected to coach others instead of doing everything themselves. That can feel uncomfortable. I'm a big football fan, so I often describe it like moving from being the best player on the pitch to becoming the coach. Your role changes completely. The goal is no longer to score every goal yourself. The goal is to help the whole team perform. Struggle number two, leading former peers. This is one of the hardest transitions. Yesterday, you were part of the team. Today, you're leading it. Nobody gives you a handbook for the awkward moment where you're suddenly conducting a performance conversation with someone that you were having a laugh with in the break room a few weeks ago. The relationships change, the expectations change, the conversations change. I've worked with many newly promoted managers who found this more challenging than the operational side of the role. In fact, I remember one manager telling me they were more worried about managing former peers than they were about hitting the performance targets. Not because they lacked ability, but because they cared about their colleagues and they didn't want those relationships to change. The reality is that some relationships will change. And that's okay. You can still be approachable, supportive and authentic, but leadership requires boundaries as well. Struggle number three, thinking leadership is about authority. Some people believe management means having all the authority. In reality, leadership is far more about influence than authority. The best managers don't spend their time reminding people they're in charge. They build trust, they communicate clearly, they set expectations, and they create an environment where people want to perform. One of the quickest ways to lose credibility is to rely on your title instead of your leadership skills. Struggle number four, taking problems home. This is one I don't think gets talked about enough. When you become manager, people bring you problems, lots of them. Operational issues, performance issues, customer complaints, staffing challenges. And sometimes those problems follow you home. I remember early in my leadership journey spending far too much time replaying situations in my head, wondering whether I'd handled something correctly or thinking about conversations that I needed to have. The lesson I eventually learned was that leaders need recovery time too. You can't pour from an empty cup. And yes, that is a leadership cliche, but some cliches exist because they're true. The biggest example where this hit home for me personally was the feeling of guilt I used to have about taking vacation time, to the extent that I would leave the work mobile phone on so that people could contact me. But then by default, I wasn't on holiday. I was just working from a location away from my site, and in some respects that was far more stressful. I should have trusted my team to run operations in my absence and problem solve where necessary. In hindsight, my leadership should have equipped them for that. So what do successful managers do differently? The best managers understand something important. They understand that their role isn't to be the smartest person in the room. It's to create an environment where other people can succeed. Sounds easy, so how do they do that? Well, they coach individuals, they develop the team, they communicate well, and they support the team. And on top of that, for themselves, they keep learning. The transition from employee to manager isn't easy, but if you're finding it difficult, it doesn't mean you're failing. It probably means that you're learning and you're coming out of your comfort zone. If you've recently moved into management, I'd love to know what has been the biggest surprise so far. Let me know in the comments. And if you're looking to develop your leadership skills and grow your career, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and watch some of the other videos. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video.